Welcome to the one and only Under the Roof podcast with Derek,
Mike,
and John.
We're going to be discussing the people, trends, and ideas that are shaping the commercial roofing industry. Welcome, everyone, to our inaugural podcast. This is a passion project for us here at the A&D team. The roofing industry is changing faster than ever with consolidation, emerging technologies, AI, private equity entering into our space. And our goal is to bring on thought leaders in our space and discuss all of the things that are happening now, might be happening in the future, and how that affects all of us here in the industry. So how about we start with some brief introductions so everybody out there knows who they're chatting with. Mike, you want to go first?
Sure. Obviously, the dates keep changing, but I've been in the commercial roofing space for the last 24 years. And at my start in the industry on the commercial contractor side, I was an estimator, project manager for about 5 years. Learned the business, understood how everything came together in our market, and then made a move onto the distribution side of the business. So I did distribution sales for about 7 years, and that brought me into becoming more on the independent rep side because the distributor that I worked for had a separate division that just handled one product line, and we became the expert in the market on that one product line. And it was something that I grew a passion for because I could learn it inside and out. I was the expert in the field, and I wanted to continue doing that with my career. I had met John in that time period and moved over to become independent, broke away from the corporation, and I've been doing that for the last 11 years.
So how many years total now?
So 24 total
24.
in the industry.
Okay, very cool. John, how about yourself?
I started right out of graduate school. I have always been a rep. I have never had the experience of working for a contractor or working for distribution. I've always been a manufacturer's rep. I've always focused on the architectural consultant end of things. That's always been where I've spent most of my time. So
Very cool.
That's what we do. Yeah.
All right. And myself, Derek Cooper. So I'm the newest part to the A&D team. And I guess to let everybody know what we do, we're a commercial manufacturers rep firm, and we represent several different lines here in the Midwest and Chicagoland area. So I got my start in the roofing industry on the residential side. Malarkey Roofing Products. I was over there for several years as a rep, as a sales rep, and then helping out with our certified contractor program. And then over the past 4 years, I've been on more of the commercial side, mainly handling coatings, liquid repair products with Carnac, things of that nature. And then jumped over to join our team here several months back in 2026. I think this is going to be a pretty fun one for us because there's so much is happening right now regarding private equity emerging into our space and really what that means for all of us. And I think one of the biggest outstanding questions is how is all of this going to shake out, right? And is it going to end up being a positive or a negative for our space and for our industry and everybody in it? So a lot has happened in the past 5 years. Some notable headlines. You have Home Depot acquiring SRS a little while back. You have QXO acquiring Beacon. Both of those were, $10+ billion acquisitions. You have contractors being purchased by private equity. You have manufacturers being purchased. So a lot of consolidation happening. And how's everything going to shake out? So I think that's going to be a really fun chat for us to discuss. Any initial thoughts as we say that, like there's so much going on?
Definitely. I think since I started in the industry, we've always been talking about how things are changing. When I first got in, single ply was new, and that was the big thing. It used to be all built up asphalt roofing. And so the distributor was pretty limited on what he had to have in inventory. It was basically one type of insulation, some rolls of material, and some kegs of asphalt. And any roof could be done with that combination. And when single ply came in, it started changing things, but it's been a 20-year slow change. But I feel like in the last 5 years, this is the real change that's happening in the industry with the consolidation.
Oh, and it's happened both on the contractor end of things and then also on the distributor end of things. I think there are more private equity ownerships of contractors today than there were even 5 years ago.
Sure.
Those platforms have exploded, and I think that the distribution channel has really consolidated lately with advent of QXO being bought out or not being bought out, but rather investing in Beacon, and then also SRS, and then the private ABC ownership end of
Yeah.
things.
What do you think is, I guess, what's so attractive for private equity about the roofing industry, right? There's a lot of different industries out there, but they're really coming into the commercial and the roofing residential industry hard.
In,
Why?
in my mind, I think it's tangibles. It's real material that you can
Mm.
own and resell. A lot of these big companies have been built on technology,
Huh.
and it's an intangible. It's something that someone else can come in and steal that space pretty quickly.
Okay.
When you get into tangible materials, it's something you can see, something you can store, something you can sell. On the distribution side, it makes a lot of sense to me. I still haven't quite wrapped my head around private equity purchasing contractors
Okay.
because there's so much unknowns on the contractor side as far as labor, workforce. It's not just buying and selling material. There's so much more to it. Distribution side, it makes sense. It's like, okay, I can come in here, make a better mousetrap in their mind on what I see.
I think one of the drivers is that these private equity companies see the building material market. It's a $800 billion market, highly fragmented, very low technology, not a lot of major corporations in there. And it's virtually recession proof. You're always going to need to have a roof. You're always going to need to repair that roof. You're always going to have housing needs, demands. And as a result, to your point, the moat to get into that particular market is rather large. And that's the reason, one of the primary reasons I think they want to go after that building materials market.
I like what you said, Mike, that it's tangible, and we're in a very intangible world right now. Everything's AI and social media and technology. This is, hey, a physical material that you can hold in your hands and that you sell it for this margin and this, and they know exactly what they're getting
Right.
from it. When did, I've only been in the roofing industry total, commercial and residential, for 6 years now. You guys have both been in it a lot longer than me. When did you see the emergence of private equity coming into our space? Was it 5 years ago? Was it 10 years ago? Do you remember a big acquisition that happened that you're like, oh, that's interesting. I wonder if this is going to continue?
I think the initial interest in private equity has to go back to Tecta, buying or private equity flowing in to buy all of those small companies, and then opening up the idea of building materials.
And then they must have seen, obviously there was some initial success, and then all those people at the top who are making money from us, hey, we need to get more involved in this space.
It is interesting. Eyes were probably opened about succession planning. Certain companies didn't have that next guy that's going to be in place that's going to take over.
And then
Either
what?
they might have had him, but they couldn't afford to take over the company, or there's other reasons why. There's different ways that companies have gone about it with, I'm drawing a blank on what it's called, but the employee-owned company.
ESOP.
ESOPs.
ESOP.
ESOP. What is ESOP?
Owned, employee-owned partner program, something like that.
Something of that nature, but it's an employee owned. Okay.
Right.
So would that be similar to what's an example of that? Would that be similar to like Lakefront being like an employee owned?
On the contractor side, Olson
Contractor.
Roofing was
Olson.
the first that I understood joined an ESOP. And
Okay.
so the ownership wanted to get out of the business.
Okay.
And the best route for them to do that was to create this ESOP. And so every employee bought in.
That's really interesting.
And so the owner can accept the buyout from a full group of people versus one person taking over the company.
And would each person buy in for an amount? Let's say it's whatever, $100 million, and there's 100 employees. Each employee would buy in for $1 million, or they can buy in for more. Would it separate equally? Is it always?
I don't know the specifics of it, but I
Okay.
think there's a path for every employee.
Okay.
So there's not a certain dollar amount, but I'm sure you can buy shares.
What a cool way for someone to, I guess, maybe doesn't have family in place or succession planning. They're like, hey, let's pass this along to the employees that have been here and give them an opportunity to own the company. That's neat.
Yeah.
I think that's a cool way to go about it.
I think that was extremely big until private equity started getting their eyes on our little sector of the business.
Because now, 100 million that company is worth to the ESOP, to the employees. Private equity come in and say, well, that's fine and dandy. We'll give you 300 million.
Right. And it's all at once.
And it's all
I think
at once.
with an ESOP, I think it's over a long period of time.
Like seller
you're-
financing or something like that.
Exactly,
Where the
yeah.
owner trying to get out, but hey, you could pay me monthly off of revenue or profits or whatnot, something of that
Exactly.
nature.
Yep.
So that's gone now. because of private equity entering the space.
So do you think, John, do you think it did start with contractors before Beacon and SRS?
I do.
Okay.
I do.
And then that started rolling on the distribution side where more eyes were in this sector.
I do. I think that's what the start was, because everything was fragmented. You had Tecta come in and they bought companies in Indianapolis and Michigan and Colorado out east, and they put all those companies together. And I think that private equity folks, with the advent of very cheap money a few years ago, private equity was looking for space to put that money and put it to work. And they saw the returns that some of these companies might have been getting. And they said, well, we need to put that free money at the time to work. Because there was a lot of interest rates were at 0 or 1 or 2%. And so the cost of money was relatively cheap.
Sure.
And so they can invest it into a company like a Beacon and get 12, 14, 20% rate of return, where before they were getting 2%.
So their risk was extremely low, and their upside was
Well, the cost of
historically
money
high.
was very low.
Right.
The risk is not mitigated, but the cost of money is lower.
Got you. With whatever they're entering in from a private equity standpoint, they're always going to have some level of risk. But with the cost of money being low and the historical success of the roofing industry, they have always obviously looked into it and investigated it. It made a lot of sense for them to jump in.
Right, because it's virtually recession proof, right? You're always going to need that roof. Insurance companies are coming in and wanting to make sure that your roof is current. If it's over 25 years old, insurance companies are saying they're not going to provide a warranty for that house, insure that house, so you need to re-roof it. So it's a built-in marketplace. And that was I think the theory of what some of these private equity folks were looking at.
Yeah.
It is interesting to me just trying to visualize how that works, because a private equity, I always see it as it's a spreadsheet, right? Purchasing something, you want to make sure you continue to get that return that historically it was getting when you purchased it,
Right.
and then try to tweak some things here and there to increase that return.
Right.
When you don't completely understand, and maybe some of the private equity companies that purchased them did understand that industry, but I have a hard time believing that they fully understand the contractor side of the business. How do you increase that return is always a question that I have. Is it real, or is it something that you can get into trouble when you purchase possibly the wrong company that you don't understand?
You open the door to really exploring the QXO purchase. That's a big purchase, and that was a lot of money flowing into that. And I think people are starting to realize that the money invested into the building materials market is not just a bolt-on type of acquisition, but that it's fundamental. And I think that this Brad Jacobs has shown a light on it. The headache that you run into is just the point that you bring up, is that Brad Jacobs is thinking that the roofing industry or the building materials industry is very similar to the success story that he obtained in his logistics business or in his rental business, which was he consolidates a fragmented industry and then he implements technology into the marketplace, and he will then be able to extract lower pricing from the manufacturers because he's controlling a larger swath of business.
Sure.
And he's able to provide the contractors premium service by providing inventory management, pricing, credit, all of those things. And so he's able to get both sides of the equation to be able to have money flowing into it. The headache that he's going to run into, I believe, is that particularly in commercial roofing is a product providing a solution to a problem. Unlike residential, where residential is the same, always the same. You're never really changing. You might change the look of the shingles or the color of the shingle, whatever. Theory is the same. But in commercial roofing, you've got parapets that are not correct. You have skylights that are falling apart. You have a deck that is different or whatever. So you're addressing a different problem. And it could be that QXO doesn't really care about the commercial roofing market, that they're going to focus on the residential market and just extract their focus, or not extract, but put their focus on that residential market because they can make that an easier turnaround.
Transition. You bring up a really good point that commercial roofing, and I know this firsthand because I come from residential, right? And know the distribution and the contractors and the manufacturers in that realm. Now I'm over here in commercial for the past many years. It definitely is a much more specialized, there's not a one size fits all solution really for any roof that we're talking to a contractor about or whatnot. It's always, there's always something different going on, and it needs to be looked at on an individual case by case basis, which means there has to be a certain level of knowledge, expertise, thoroughness, detail, right? It's just not, hey, do this and this. It's like, well, we got to check it out. We got to investigate it. You're not specialized or have that knowledge. It makes it a little bit difficult to understand it and to add value. And that brings up the question of, with private equity coming involved and all this money coming in, are they just building bigger companies, or are they building better companies? What's
Right.
going to be the result, right? Because we know they're going to be bigger and more consolidated and less local and regional to more national. But is that going to end up having a better product, a better service, a better result?
If it is the bigger company that they're building, I can't imagine that it's going to be a better result. And that's where I get excited about that side of it, because we'll always have a place in the world when the big distributors become bigger, because you do have to have that personalized touch in every market that understands every market's different. Chicago is so much different than Ohio or some of the other
Sure. So different.
other markets out there. Like Texas is its own world, and you have to have that expert in every area. And the bigger you get, the less touch you have, and the harder it is to pivot and change and adapt to where the world is going, what the market is doing.
So when you say it benefits us, you're saying like independent rep groups and people who have experience and knowledge that can then assist those larger distributors that now are a lot bigger, but maybe need some more support because they are bigger.
I believe that. I always look at, in my mind, Apple computers came out. They loved the fact that IBM was huge. IBM was everywhere. And they owned the corporate commercial world.
Okay.
But these young kids out of their garage could tackle a giant because they can't pivot. They can't pivot to what they know best into something different. And so if you're agile and you're small and you market very well, you can always compete against the bigger the component, the easier it is to compete against them sometimes.
Obviously, especially in the local markets.
Right. And I guess I should rephrase that, because we're not competing. We're adding resources to.
You're
some of
always
the
going to be
giants.
needed
You're always going to be needed.
in that space. That makes a ton of sense. Anything else on the pertaining to like the QXO Beacon? Because QXO has been purchasing other companies as well, right? So it's not just Beacon. So I think, what was the other one? Was it Top Shield, or I was looking up a couple.
Top Build.
Top Build.
Top Build.
So they're really diversifying, and I read a quote somewhere, and correct me if I'm wrong, but it said that they want to become the Amazon of the building materials space, right? Where I guess a one-stop shop for everything in our world. That's distribution, contractor, manufacturing. Is everything going to be under that umbrella? And I guess has any company done that yet, where they have a bit of everything?
So that analogy, would they be a resource for just the building owner then? Or is that what you're thinking? So the building owner would make the purchase of, here's what I want for my building. I'm going to go to this one source, and they'll have a contractor come out. They'll have the materials needed.
Very possible. Very possible.
Interesting.
Could be a pushback from the contractor end of things, right? Because why do I want to compete against why am I going to buy material from a distributor who is in turn competing against me on the install? So there might be some local pushback on that. It might look good in theory where you're vertical and you're going all the way from material all the way through the installation, but you're competing in an open marketplace.
You're selling to and competing against the same people.
Exactly.
Right.
I could see that being extremely frustrating for the contractor.
Right.
But if they get to the point where they're large enough or they're successful enough, when I say they, like a QXO or one of these big companies coming in, you might not have a choice. Just like now, where Amazon, there might be people out there who, hey, buy local, buy local, buy local. But it gets to a point where you got to buy from Amazon. And when I say you got to, it's because it's there sometimes same day. It might be half the price, and you could do it right from your phone. And the convenience outweighs almost the morality so heavily that it's like, it becomes the norm. It's now, once again, I don't know if it'll ever get to that level, but if they are buying every facet of our industry, it's plausible.
I could almost see that on the residential side.
Okay.
And I could see it on the giant battery AI structures, the giant buildings that they're building.
Okay.
Where it's the same. It can come to the point where it's the same thing basically every
Like
time.
the data center?
The data centers.
Okay.
I could see that happening just because they want to be vertical in every aspect of that building.
And everything is standardized.
It can be standardized.
And then it becomes more like residential.
Right.
So
I feel like there'd almost be a whole nother sector of building that would not fall into that. In my mind, I don't know, maybe someday in the future, but I think there's so much re-roofing and old historic buildings that it would just never work on.
Sure.
Where it's just a one size fits all.
I agree with you. I think that in the realm of residential work, the standardization idea of having the inventory, getting it to the marketplace, you can do an eagle view of a house and really figure out exactly what you need. But when you're looking at a commercial re-roof,
sure,
you're not able to understand where's the leak, what's happening to the deck, what's happening to the parapets, what's happening to the skylights, what's happening to all of the other elements that are impacting on the performance of the building. You just don't see it happening. And ability to transport material on a quick basis like Amazon does might work for the residential area. I know the house is going to need XYZ, but on a commercial job, you open up a historic building, there's always something that's going to not work or that you're unanticipating or not, but you're not able to anticipate exactly what's going to happen.
Well, that's why service, especially within the distribution space, is so important, and why certain contractors work with certain distributors rather than others. It usually comes down to the level of service, especially in regards to getting the material there on time, the right way, not having things messed up, because there is so much that can go wrong. And if you don't really intimately know the details of a project from the distribution levels, like, it's really easy to make mistakes. So contractors are working with people that they've worked with the past 5 or 10 years. They know what they need. They understand maybe if they made a mistake as a contractor on their proposal or PO, maybe the distribution or their manufacturer rep can catch it. That's happened all the time on the Karnak end, where somebody's placed an order for a commercial roof coating job, and we saw that they switched. Maybe they did the math wrong and there was too few or way too many buckets. And if they have a little bit of help and support of us double checking it, not playing big brother, but just as an added resource, they really appreciate that. Now, if you don't even know what to be looking for at the distribution level or manufacturing level, or whatever level it is, well, you can't provide that service,
right?
Because you don't even know what to look for. You just, okay, here's PO, run it.
And I think that's what many of these larger private equity companies are counting on, is that they're going to have a call center in Nebraska, and you're going to call in on your phone and say, I need to have this delivered, and they're going to send it off to the call center in Nebraska, and then they're going to send that order to the local branch, and then the branch will then deliver that material whenever they need it. The issue is going to be when something doesn't happen according to plan, and you're out on that job site and you have 4 or 5 guys that are standing there, or you've got a crane rental that will far exceed the cost of your profit that you have.
It's a pretty dangerous game of telephone when you're going through more and more layers and you don't have that one person in the office that really knows your company inside and out. One of our manufacturers, Karnak, we have Lucy, who is amazing customer service, and she is always called out by our contractors of, oh, how phenomenal and this and that. She knows those accounts so intimately that when she sees an order placed If something doesn't look right, she knows. And they know that the contractors know they have someone that has their back.
Yeah.
Right now, if a Lucy is getting something from one person, it's being sent to this person and this person and this person, it's disseminated 5 different times, makes it a little bit tougher.
For
So
sure.
that is an interesting.
For sure. Then it comes down to the purchaser. If they purchase it wrong, they have to take that ownership and it's like, okay, I screwed up and there was no one to catch me, right? Customer service has become so golden now.
Yeah.
So important because I think unfortunately customer service personnel is getting stretched so thin. It's a very demanding job. And part of cost cutting is let's do more with less. And it's a pressure cooker. And when you have that solid customer service person, that makes or breaks a line, really.
Absolutely.
The most important thing for every product line that we sell, to have the right customer service people
1
in place.
million%.
And understanding your materials, the limits of your materials, what they can do, what they can't do. That's almost more important than order takers will go away. It is the people who will problem solve and be able to help the contractor figure out what he really needs, when he needs it, how he needs to install it, that will exceed and be successful in the next 5 years. That's what I believe. And whether that's a distribution company or whether it's a manufacturer's rep company or whoever, but whoever is able to help the contractor negotiate the complexities of the job and understand that job much clearer, he will be successful.
I completely agree with that. The thing is, there's far fewer of those people, and there are more of the order takers. A lot of people in our industry. So, what's going to happen to those people who are really good at what they do? Are they going to be highly recruited and highly incentivized and pulled away from different companies and this and that, or there's a smaller amount of those individuals, right? So it's going to be interesting to see if more rise up because they have to, or if there's going to be a much more competitive landscape of talent because there's a smaller grouping of those people. Like what's going to happen with them? I think the one thing that's interesting when I think a big positive of private equity coming in is when they're bringing in a bunch of capital, right? When I was with Malarkey and Wholesome came in to acquire Malarkey Roofing Products, what they always said, and from our leadership, this is what we were told. I like this, right? And you never know what's real or not. But said, hey, they bought us because we were doing really well, right? They bought us because we were doing a lot of things right, and that was very attractive to them as a company, right? So they don't want to come in and start putting a bunch of red tape and start changing everything up, at least for now, right? They want to come in and have us keep doing what we're doing. Nobody really got fired or laid off or anything like that. I think people got raises, if anything, or promoted into different areas. They said they wanted to strap a jetpack to our backs, right? Which is capital and money and investing in maybe a new manufacturing line or a new warehouse or a new technology. But hey, you guys have been doing things right. Now we just want to keep on feeding you and keep on giving you money so you can do that same right thing at a bigger scale, right? So if these companies do that, it could go really well. But sooner or later, always, things start changing. More red tape comes into place. Sometimes commissions and salaries get cut and people get dropped. And that's when people get scared of, hey, what's going to happen to the landscape when an outside entity comes in that doesn't maybe know the space and doesn't value service as much as they value, once again, numbers on a spreadsheet.
Right.
Is this working or not based on math versus is this working or not based on how a customer feels about how they're served by that particular contractor, distributor, or manufacturer? So that's where it can go either way.
I think there are two completely separate schools of thought on that when an acquisition happens. Either keep the core team in place and provide them more resources to build and grow naturally, or come in, cut up all the upper management and save the employees, but you're basically cutting off the upper management and bringing in new management and building it that way.
And why are you doing that? Why are you cutting up the upper management and bringing in new people?
It shows that you don't have faith in the existing company that you bought, I feel like.
That's one thing. But also, they're trying to look good on paper too. So
Right,
we're talking about just raw
Those are big
EBITDA.
salaries.
They are the biggest salaries. And if they feel that those jobs can be done by someone close to equal as the person that was in the job for half the cost, even if they're wrong, because they probably are wrong. That person has a lot of knowledge and relationships and all these intangibles. they're going to do that. They're going to bring in a younger person that's for half the salary, maybe. Three people had a role that they think could be done by one. And that changed a lot of stuff. And we've seen some of that.
We have, for sure.
I've seen a contractor. This was probably 5 years ago. It was I won't mention any names. It was a larger residential contractor, very successful in the area, been in the area for 20, 30 years, word of mouth, no advertising because everybody knew them and they just did great work. Great sales team, invested in trainings, like what I would say is a prototypical, really solid residential, larger size contractor. Loved them. They were great. A few years back, they got approached by private equity, and the owner, who I knew pretty well, basically said he was never going to sell. He was always going to keep it in the family, this and that. He said he got offered such an outrageous amount of money, like 5 or 10x what he thought it would be, that once again, there was no other choice. It made such sense. And they promised that they were going to keep the entire team on. He was going to be commissioned to be on for, I think, a year or 2 or 3. There's usually always that. So he could keep everything going. They wanted his knowledge, this and that. So it was a beautiful deal. And that it makes a lot of sense. A year later, I heard back from that same company. They let everybody go. Like, so things changed really quickly. It wasn't exactly the dream that was sold. And that stuff can happen.
It totally can happen. And if I put myself in that position, how could you say no in certain cases? It's like, this is generational money.
It's generational.
And it's a period of time where this isn't going to be forever, where there's these opportunities out there.
Right.
So if you write it out and you say, I'm not going to sell out to this private equity firm, you could miss out. And then now
you're talking change your life money, change your kids and their grandkids' money. And also, like, if you've grown a really successful company, you've put in 10, 20, 30, 40 years, maybe your father before you, years of work. And now you got the payoff. Like, of course, like I would. I think anybody
it'd be hard to walk away from
would think about that. But then once again, the whole company is on and changed forever.
Yeah.
Which is wild. It reminds me of like the whole live golf fiasco where, oh, hey, they're being offered $100 million to go play in this other tour. And then some guys are like, well, legacy, and we're not going to sell out.
Right.
But for $100 million, change your family's life money forever, and you're playing golf? Like, why wouldn't you?
Once it shook out, it was like 2 or 3 guys that said no. Everyone else was on board.
Everybody else. So,
but you bring up a really good point. Isn't there some manufacturers out there that did throw money into, or they got bought out by private equity, and things have changed a little bit, and private equity is now stepping back from that manufacturer, and those people that are embodied in that company are out of a job.
We've heard a couple of stories about that.
So private equity coming in isn't always for the long-term benefit of that, for that company. Somebody's made an error.
I think most of the time they didn't understand the full impact of what they bought. They think they can cut out certain products and no one's going to really notice or care because our sales are so low. But sometimes there's a product that your sales are low, but that's why people are buying the other stuff that you offer.
That's a really good point.
And once you start cutting off some of these outliers, it can make a huge impact. And you didn't realize that. You're just looking at a spreadsheet saying, we only make $2,000 on this product line. Why are we wasting our time?
Right.
Well, it turns out that this is a pretty big deal in one little area of Chicago where everyone's using it. And if you cut that out, you lose all the other business that they were buying from you.
That's a really good point. What about, I guess, one of the other giant happenings in our space, Home Depot purchasing SRS? It's giant. Anything, I guess, that stand out most to you? And what's that been about? A little over a year now?
It's definitely been over a year.
That was a $10 billion, I think, plus acquisition. And I think Home Depot said that got their serviceable market to over $1 trillion by bringing on SRS for Home Depot.
Yeah.
So that's...
But my concept of SRS has always been it's a residential company, and they have tried to
in our market,
and exactly here in Chicago, they've always emphasized the residential, and it makes sense then for Home Depot to have that avenue. But if they're pushing into commercial, they are going to need to have a different type of model, I think, than the AI-generated, technology-based type of company that they are.
Yeah.
And I think the jury's still out on it as far as I know, but they have a huge piece of business that they were purchasing from somebody that they didn't acquire.
Yeah.
And they're still supplying a lot of shingles and incidentals to the Home Depot market. And once that shuts off, I don't know if they have enough infrastructure on the SRS portion that they bought to supplement all that they're going to lose from the amount of products that they were buying from a competitor now. And so it'll be interesting to see if
See
they
how it
can get
shakes
up to
out.
speed quick enough to be
Yeah.
able to cover that.
And we do know that SRS, at least in our area a little bit, they're definitely trying to enter into commercial.
Right.
And there is
Yeah,
a bit of a focus on it for a lot of years, obviously residential focus, and that's how they've grown. But I think almost everybody now, contractor level, distribution, if you weren't interested or focused in commercial at all, you definitely are starting to be now. Because some of the things you mentioned earlier, that if residential is a little bit more, let's call it cookie cutter or lack of better words, and commercial is a little more specialized, that means that there needs to be specialists that can go in, which means that it's not going to be able to be replicated as easy, which means that there's work to be done, and they want to enter into that space because somebody has to do that work, and it's going to be more costly to do that work because there's less people who are doing it. And so it makes sense for a lot of these residential contractors to start entering the commercial space, for these residential distributors to start trying to get into it as well. So it'll be interesting to see how that, if they're successful with that.
Right. I know on the distribution side, when I was on distribution, you always wanted to cover both bases. Where I worked, actually, we were 99% commercial.
Okay.
And the thought process was we've got to bring in residential because as the commercial market might come down a little bit, the residential, they're almost opposite charts. Residential rises when commercial's down,
Right.
and vice versa. And so to be diversified is key.
Sure.
And so that's probably why we're seeing more distribution houses trying to have both. Because it's probably more likely that someone's either fully residential and doesn't have much commercial. It's becoming more rare to be solely commercial focused, I feel like.
Because residential, like shingle, it's pretty low hanging fruit. It's like you need to have a shingle line because somebody's going to buy it from you, period.
That's moving out every day.
It's
Yeah.
moving out every day. Homes are being built. There's, I don't want to say less effort, but like it's going to happen. They're going to be purchased. Which color do you want?
Right.
And then there's obviously some service and whatnot that goes into that. But why would you just pass up those sales? You want it. They have to have some portion of it, especially with storms and insurance. But then when the storms don't come, same thing for a contractor that is mainly only a storm insurance contractor. If there isn't storms for that year or for 2 years, and they don't have a sales focused retail presence, they're in trouble. And I've ran into that when I was on the residential side, and there was a year without storms. People really were scrambling and having to travel to different parts of the country, or they were really having to invest in training and figuring out how do we go sell a retail roof to a homeowner. If they didn't know how to do that, they were losing. So at every level, they're being impacted for sure.
So one of the gateways for that residential contractor to get into the light commercial are coatings, right? So maybe we can talk about coatings a little bit and see how that will help that residential contractor step into that contract, into that commercial base.
Well, let's talk about it, I guess, top down, because same thing from our initial conversation, private equity has started to get into the coatings manufacturing space, right? So, well, I guess there's been some acquisitions. So Suprema, they bought Tropical or acquired
right.
And then, so Chicagoland, Arm Lucas, they were
Bought by private equity.
bought by private equity. So obviously we're seeing that private equity is interested in it. So they see that there's a lot of legs there. And we've been noticing in our space that residential contractors that are really solid ones have had really good success dipping their toe into the commercial market, starting out with coatings. Lower barrier of entry. You don't necessarily have to have as much equipment. The training, if done correctly, provided by the manufacturer is, I want to say minimal, but once you wrap your mind around it and your hands around it, it makes some easy common sense, and it has the highest margins in our entire industry. So for a residential contractor, maybe that did have a slower year because there wasn't storms or whatnot. They've always heard about commercial. They've always been interested, but they've been scared of it because they don't have the capital to invest in the big equipment. They're not union, this and that. Well, wait a second. We can do coatings. We could get spray rig or some buckets and a brush and some fabric and do some repairs and make really good margins. It makes a lot of sense.
Yeah. It's all basically prep work. You got to make sure you know what you're getting into on the coating side. And like you said, if you get the right training, if you get a guy who is actually interested in doing it correctly, it is a no-brainer. It's a way to get into that market because it's lower labor. It's just doing it correctly, making sure that
Quicker
you're getting into.
Yeah. And that's where I think, and correct me if I'm wrong, but where coatings has got a really bad rap is for a lot of years, if people, hey, let's just coat this building, but they weren't trained correctly, or they were told by whoever, manufacturer or whatnot, that, oh, just throw the white stuff on it, and it wasn't cleaned and it wasn't prepped.
Right.
Well, then you're basically lighting your money on fire for that building owner, because if the building isn't prepped properly, that coating's gonna fail. And I think a lot of contractors maybe who were interested in it and wanted to get into it, they did a coating project, maybe their first one, but weren't properly trained or assisted to do that first project or two, and it failed. And then that building owner is pissed.
Right.
And then they either have to pay for it or they have to go to distribution or the manufacturer, and then they never touch them again. Coatings are horrible, this and that.
Right.
And that's what we really try to avoid by making sure people are trained properly and helping them avoid roofs that maybe should never be coated in the first place.
Right. There are some you should just walk away from. You're not going to solve it with coating.
So what do you guys? You guys focus on that coatings end of things. So if a contractor comes to you and says, "I got this job. I'm thinking about doing the coatings," walk me through some of the elements that you would talk to him about. How would you approach that project?
Or you're saying if they have a building that they're interested in doing a coating for? Well, I think first and foremost, what we like to do is we want to get up there on the roof with that contractor, because a lot of things they don't know what to look for quite yet, especially if they're more focused on residential. And we can help them identify what those things are that first time, and then they can, moving forward, know what to look out for. We could also recommend the really easy low-hanging fruit that maybe they didn't think of, like doing moisture scans, understanding that if there is moisture and water underneath and in the insulation, well, then we got to get that out of there. Helping them understand that it's not a one-size-fits-all solution, that it's not a new roof, that it's not a miracle in a can, which is how it's been sometimes sold for a long time.
Right.
So I think just giving them that baseline knowledge.
And I think a lot of the jobs that we'll look at, once you get up there, you'll realize that they've gone through a lot of contractors trying to repair these roofs, and you'll see all sorts of different incompatible repair materials. Some it's a hodgepodge of what you find up there. And so just teaching the contractor the fact that certain things you can go over, certain things you can't. We have to make sure we recommend the correct chemistry that's going to work on some of the repairs that were done. Maybe you have to remove some of the repairs that were done. And like Derek said, doing that extra step of scanning the roof is key. What's inside? There might be moisture. We don't want to touch that. We've got to cut that out. We've got to make sure that we're going over a sound material. And I think that might be something that other competitors avoid, is the fact that we're not putting a new roof on here. What we're doing is we're restoring the existing roof. So if you have a bad substrate to begin with, we're really not doing anything with a coating. We need to have a solid substrate that might be at the end of its life, and we can restore this roof and actually extend the life, maybe 10 or 20 years.
I think in every training we do, we always preach that point. Like, hey, this is not a new roof. We are extending and elongating the life of a still sound, maybe declining, but sound roof substrate that we could elongate its life.
Right.
Because almost every meeting we're in, I think most people think it's a new roof.
Right.
That's not the case. And when you go ahead, John.
I would go back a step when you say in your training of the contractors. So you make an effort to educate, train, walk through the various steps, and basically hold the contractor's hand on the first few jobs to make
Especially
sure
for the first few jobs.
that it's done correctly.
It's so important because they're eager. I think we typically invest in these companies that we know they want to do good work. but they don't know every in and out of doing a coating restoration because it's their first time or two. So
right.
getting them in there, that's why we like working with Karnak. You mentioned chemistries earlier. They have every different chemistry. They have a really good training program. National Technical Director Chris Hudig is great, comes in and gets people trained up. It gets actually hands-on with the material. So rather than just talking about it and the intangibles like we were talking about before, tangibly roll materials out, talk about the right tools and spray rigs and pressures you need to clean the building properly. And really, like you said, John, like handhold them through those first jobs. We had a contractor, once again, won't mention names, but did a project and they were trying to put on a silicone sealant, which is a much thicker type of product. It's much more of a trowel grade type of product. And I walked out to the job and I think they were using like a paintbrush, or not a paintbrush, but like a very flimsy, and it was really hard for them to work that sealant, right? And that's an easy little training thing that, hey, actually you want to use this, here's why, and really get that seam detail correct. And boom, they knew it. And then they were up and running from there, right? But without us being there, they had still got the job done 100%, but it might have taken them hours and hours more because they didn't have the right tool because they didn't know.
Right.
Sure.
And that's where having good support, and that could be support at the manufacturer level, distribution level, manufacturer rep level, for a contractor is huge. That's where you need to be able to have a good team around you because they're dealing with so much. And same thing with distribution. Sales rep or a manager or a purchasing, they're dealing with 50 different manufacturers and how many different product lines and products.
Right.
So to have someone on that side being able to support them is huge. And they remember every component of that themselves. I always tell my distribution reps, I'm like, hey, you don't have to be an expert on any of this stuff. Like, I know enough to be dangerous, but I know I don't envy your position. You have so much to deal with and you have so much you have to keep in your brain. Like, let us help you. And I think they really appreciate that. They appreciate that support.
It reminds me of like being a doctor, right? So you have your general practitioner, that's the distributor,
There.
and then you have a specialist, like a heart specialist or a
Yes.
lung specialist, or whatever, or
Then the
blood
X-ray technician is the IR scan.
Exactly. It reminds me, it really is that. People think that roofing is very generic and it's the same across this whole arc of buildings and situations, and it's just not. There are so many different permutations and combinations of materials and uses. It really is quite extraordinary.
I think that's what keeps it fun too. I think you really enjoy that, right? Like helping someone solve a problem, or hey, like help me diagnose what's going on here. I think that's what keeps it fun for all of us.
For sure.
I very much like the going in and talking with architects and working with them and trying to find a solution for a particular project. Every building is a one-off. That's the thing. Every building is a one-off, whether it's new or it's a historic renovation or whatever. It's because they're all different. So, yeah.
Thanks for listening in so far to the episode. If you're an architect, contractor, distribution, any of our partners, manufacturing, we want to serve as a resource for you here on the A&D Products team. I'm going to put our contact information here, or you can like, subscribe, and follow our channel. We're going to be pumping out new content as often as possible, sharing all the news, trends, industry thought leaders. We'll bring them onto the podcast and just have real conversations and share things that are happening in the industry that we all love. And now back to the episode. So winners and losers. Who do we think over the course of the next 5-10 years or more immediate are going to be the biggest winners and losers regarding private equity entering into our space? And that could be distribution, manufacturing, contractors. It can be consumers. It could be building owners. Like, who do we think is going to, let's start with win the most from this new trend of private equity emerging into the roofing industry? For me, when I was thinking about this, I think that the smaller, local, independent distributors might benefit the most at the distribution level from this. Obviously, private equity is coming in and they're consolidating a lot of these once smaller companies and making them larger, or buying some of the bigger companies and making them bigger, right? What we notice with the smaller local independents is they have really high levels of service.
Right.
They've built great relationships with their contractors, right? They typically have really large, very educated, experienced, knowledgeable sales teams, service departments. So why I think they could win is, once again, bigger isn't always better, and sometimes smaller is more agile and helpful at the local level. But as well, they're very attractive to private equity from a purchase standpoint, right? If they're crushing it and maybe they're running very um, um, lean, they're very lean, mean sales machines, and they have great relationships and great teams. They're very profitable. That's very attractive to private equity too. So I think they could either win by competing against the larger guys, or they can win by selling for whatever X multiple they're offered by private equity. So I think that's a big winner in my mind.
Sure, sure. I think the pricing pressure is going to get more difficult for the smaller distributors.
That's a good
You,
point.
you have to be specialized. If you do get specialized in a certain aspect, you can beat that because you're the expert in that field. But the competition side is going to be tough on the price.
That makes sense though. A lot of the smaller local independents that we know, they're more in depth in the commercial realm,
Right.
which points to what we were talking about before about, hey, it is more specialized. You do need to have more education, more background, more experience. So
Right.
therefore, it makes sense that those more smaller local independents are, on the commercial side. Because if they were more on the residential side, which is even further price dependent,
Absolutely.
they would
Yeah.
be at a bigger disadvantage against the big names out there.
You can package a couple of jobs and get to a very large amount of material for a select few jobs on the commercial side and be very competitive versus on the residential side, you just have to keep having inventory and more trucks every year and having those big buys. And
Bigger.
Makes sense.
I think the most valuable person here in this whole sales, marketing, distribution matrix is not going to be the order taker, but it's going to be the guy or the company that's able to diagnose and provide a solution to that particular owner's problems up on the roof.
Again, specifically on the commercial side, there's so
Yeah.
much money that can be lost if there's a misorder,
Wow.
a delay in delivery. There's so many things that the material price almost is inconsequential. Consequential, but it's not as impactful
Right.
as on the potential residential side because of all the lost labor dollars that you can have.
Correct.
Well, even on one of my contractor buddies who I'm pretty close with, he works with a particular distributor over another, even though that particular distributor is a little bit more expensive and he knows it, but he's very confident in the service. He knows that if it's a Saturday or Sunday and he's short, somehow his rep is going to figure it out and go into the branch and open up and grab the extra bundle of shingles. He's more of a residential guy, but that level of service is why he sticks with him,
It's worth
even
it to him.
though he knows and is brought the opposition, the competitors all the time are, hey, we could do this for way less. No, but I really trust that he's going to help me when I need him to help me. That's huge.
That partnership is huge.
It's
So important.
crucial. I think also, like, how about the actual installers and the applicators and the people who are doing this work, right? I think, and that's a whole other topic we can maybe get into another episode, but about like labor shortages and people who are real true experts in this field. There's less and less and less of them. They're retiring, right? So like skilled tradesmen, I think they're going to win from this because as more money is entering in this space and there's less and less experts in the space, those experts are going to be more and more
In demand.
much more in demand. And therefore they need to get paid.
I absolutely agree with that. I think that for so long, people have said, I have to go to college in order to get ahead. And if I don't have that college degree, I'm not going to be able to provide for my family. I think in today's world, the trades will really excel in the next 5 or 10 years simply because of the cost of going to college, the advent of trade work, and the fact that I think that mindset of, well, I'm a plumber or I'm a roofer or look at Europe, and I think in Europe, tradesmen are held in very high esteem. They're gilded and they are trained for years before they're put out on their own. And I think that concept is finally taking hold here in the United States. I think.
Interesting.
That's a really good point. And once again, tangible versus intangible. Somebody who actually is doing something.
Right. You can get it
I
done.
just appreciate that. Like just for our world. So that's, I guess that then points to another potential winner, which is the opposite of that, is technology and AI and all of these different softwares and technologies that are entering into the space. I think they're a potential huge winner too. We know QXO, they're really heavily investing in technology and AI and all this stuff. So I think anybody who owns that type of company, either software or AI or emerging technology that can benefit the roofing industry, is probably going to win pretty big. And whoever does maybe figure out how to leverage technology or AI to diagnose a commercial roof situation, which I think will be very hard, if not impossible, like we were discussing before. But you never know. There's machines now that can you put them up there on a flat roof and they could scan the entirety of the roof, give you a full report, like if there's water underneath. I think a company, Tramex, is starting to do something that is more, I guess, autonomous, if you will. So I think anybody that has technology that benefits the commercial roofing space could be a potential winner as well.
Interesting.
Hopefully not. Hopefully not too much though, because we all would like to have a job. But what about losers? Who do we think is at the biggest risk for private equity coming into our space?
I think as private equity gets larger, manufacturers will be consolidated because you're not going to be able to support 50 different manufacturers. You're going to have to boil that down to maybe 10. And on the commercial side, maybe there's 3 major manufacturers that are doing the majority of the work. That could be a big change, potentially.
These people are commoditizing that material purchase, and they're trying to drive that cost down from the manufacturer end of things. They will cut the smaller manufacturers out and focus on the larger ones. Absolutely.
It'll be interesting.
Absolutely.
Yeah. I think any company at any level, distribution, manufacturer, contractor, that doesn't have a unique value proposition, because everybody is going to be combating with price and this and that, but what else do you have? What else are you bringing your customer to the table? So if you're distribution, what are you bringing your contractor? If you're a manufacturer, what are you bringing to your distributor and to your contractor customer? If you don't have something unique, and that can be a number of things, that can be the level of service. I think that's a really unique thing, that relationship you have. It could be certain maybe tools and free resources that you provide to that contractor, trainings, education. If you're just going to be offering a product at a price, I think you're going to lose, because I think it's going to get more and more and more competitive, and you got to bring more to the table.
That's interesting. That's true. I think most manufacturers are looking at easier takeoff programs that they can provide for free to the contractor, trying to make it as easy as possible to package the entire purchase easier, more streamlined. It is interesting. If you don't have that value proposition, you're out, essentially, because then you're just selling price.
You'll get crushed. You get crushed if you're just offering price. The last vestige of a poor salesman, right? So
It's a race to zero.
Really, and warranties, same thing. You need to be able to provide some value, whatever that value proposition is. Have to bring the value, and you have to elevate it so that people will value that that whatever that element is, knowledge or insightfulness, or being there on Saturday, delivering the material on Sunday, taking that phone call when you don't want to take the phone call. You have to make people aware of what you are bringing to the table, which, quite honestly, sometimes we don't do a good job at, and that's something that we need to work on, and that's why we're doing this.
It's part of this.
Yeah,
It's
you
part
go.
of
Yeah,
part
exactly.
of this.
That's why we're doing this.
I always say taking the call you don't want to take. I think being in service and being in sales, right, in this industry, I always appreciated the freedom that it allowed me, and with that freedom, this is cliche, but comes along responsibility and appreciation. So I always felt like, hey, I don't care, even if I'm on a beach in Hawaii on vacation, like, hey, like, it's okay if you call me and I can answer a quick 5-minute call and help with something, I'm gonna do that because of all the other freedom I get and benefits from being in this industry. So I think that is true, and that's something that no AI or no technology or no money can take away is personal service and a customer knowing if they call you, you're gonna be there, you're gonna be able to help them.
Mhm.
Like that, I think that definitely is a winner, and that's not gonna go away.
Right.
And the more that does go away, I think the more customers are going to go away from those companies that are not providing that level of service, that just have a answering department that or an AI robot or this and that. You got to have some level of of human communication, interaction, and service.
I'm reminded of a multiple projects where we have worked with the architect, specified materials, sold the material to the contractors, and then gotten out to the job site. And for whatever reason, whether it's weather, whether it is unforeseen conditions, whatever it is, something has changed. And the material that was originally chosen is no longer appropriate.
Okay.
And now you have to change and figure out what the new material is, yet still maintain the delivery times, the warranty requests, the pricing pressures, all of those elements. And I'm not sure that having a call center in Omaha, Nebraska is going to be able to provide that on-site, on-eyes solution to that particular problem. And I think that's where we will people who are specialized in that area with knowledge and able to execute solutions will be successful.
Right.
Well,
I always have to remind myself, you don't have to know everything, but you want to be the guy that has that one call that he can make and make the problem, solve the problem. And the guy,
not 5 calls.
You don't have to be the guy, but you have to know the guy that you call the next call.
You have to know the guy rather than, hey, call this number, Mr. Customer.
That's right. You want the
Because-
customer to still call you, but you.
When I started 100 years ago, an architect told me in Chicago, this is only relevant for Chicago, but in Chicago, you can make 3 phone calls and get to whatever answer you need for whatever problem you're looking at. Now, if you're in Des Moines or you're in Fargo, North Dakota,
Might be a
I'm
few
not
more.
sure you're going to be able to get that solution. But in Chicago, you can probably make 3 phone calls and get to whatever you need to.
Yeah.
And Chicago is a very unique town,
It
I
is.
think, with the
Big,
scope.
but
Yes.
people know everyone. And I think to find solutions in those scenarios of, oops, something happened, what do we do? You need to have agility and flexibility,
Mhm.
right? Where it's not, once again, one size fits all. Hey, call this number. Well, do they even know what's going on? Do they have eyes on it? Like, probably not. We had a situation, I always reference this a while back, where we had a job. It was a coating restoration. I think they were newer to Karnak or they haven't done a full restoration before. And there was a situation that came up where they just ran short on material, right? I think the roof was alligatoring and it was soaking up more of I think it was a silicone project. It was soaking more of it up. So their coverage rate wasn't what they thought it was going to be. So they were short the job. And I think it was on a Saturday they were doing the job. Well, they called us and this and that. And one of the other cool things about Karnak, our VP of sales actually went to the plant, put buckets in the back of his vehicle, and drove an hour and a half, I think it was up to Rockford, and delivered those buckets to the job. And that is being flexible. That's being agile. They can't call a number on a Saturday and get that figured out.
Right.
They needed to have a person that they can trust that was going to throw buckets in the back of the truck and then go and deliver to the job site. So that, I think, is huge. And that's why those companies are going to win.
Right. Right. Because that is becoming more and more rare.
100%.
Under consolidation, it's like, it just doesn't.
Who do you call?
Like you say, going to a call center and on a weekend, no one's picking up the phone.
And if they do, if they're in Omaha, Nebraska, and it's Sally Joe Sue and
Right.
running short on buckets, okay, we'll have somebody call you Monday.
Yeah.
Well, wait a second here. That's not going to work.
I got that roof open. I got
We gotta-
to get that
Rain's
thing.
coming in 10.
Yeah,
some
you
help
got to
here.
get that thing closed up. We have a distributor here in town, and I know I can't tell you multiple times, contractor, we're doing a job, contractor has run into a problem, run short or gotten the wrong material. I've made a phone call to the distributor and said, I need you to deliver this at 11 o'clock on a Friday, 11 o'clock in the morning. I need you to get this material to this guy early this afternoon. Can you do that for me? Absolutely. And they deliver that material on the job site within 2 hours. And the service that they're able to provide is extraordinary. It is really something that, to your point, local, flexible, and attentive to details is something that I think will win the day.
They know their value proposition.
Exactly.
Yeah, I agree. All right. Well, how about everybody gives a hot take of what is one thing that if you can look into the roofing industry crystal ball right in front of you and say, hey, this I think is going to happen in the next 5 or 10 years, what would that thing be?
That is a tough one.
That's a tough question.
I'm gonna thought into it.
I think with the cost of money going up, I just think some of these PE moves are being very optimistic in their payout rate.
Okay.
And
You're saying the payout rate that they're buying these companies for?
well, they're
multiple?
overpaying.
Okay.
They're overpaying
Yep.
for the units, and then when things don't go exactly as planned and they hit a roadblock or they hit a bump in the road, I think that the luster of the private equity ownership will come off.
That's interesting because these companies might back out. They might maybe bankrupt the company. Several things could go wrong. And then all of a sudden,
Something happens. Something happens.
that luster fades away. That's a good point.
I'll do a 10-year. I don't think it'll happen in 5
10-year,
years, but I
okay.
think in 10 years, we're going to see more specialization in contractors. So they're going to have 1 or 2 things that they're very good at, and they're not going to look at all this other stuff. And so it's going to be very boutique, very customized, high margin stuff that more of the independent guys will look at. And then the private equity will do their thing with the large projects, the big open things. But I think specialization, probably in all sectors of our business, is going to.
So they're going to go
grow.
the opposite route of what's happening now, the consolidation. And hey, we're going to be a specialist in X, Y, and Z and really do
Very
it
limited,
well.
very focused. Yeah.
So winning by going the opposite direction, being different from what's happening right now.
Yeah.
I think that's a really good thought.
Going to be that heart surgeon.
They make the
Right.
most.
Right.
Yeah.
They charge the most.
Gotta
They
have
better
it.
be good.
Gotta have them.
I would say mine, and I guess cheating a little bit because I'm starting to see this happening now, is I think both residential that are entering into commercial space and already established commercial roofing companies are really going to start focusing and prioritizing having a commercial service and maintenance and repair departments. I think all of these commercial companies now are really going to understand that having maintenance departments that are always working. It doesn't matter if there's storms or big projects landed or whatever it might be. There's always repairs and maintenance that needs to be done on commercial buildings, right? And they're going to have quarterly maintenance contracts. They're going to be going up there and checking the roof and cleaning it and clearing out the drains and all the stuff, doing little repairs. And I think they're going to identify it as a really great revenue driver to the company. I think they're going to identify that it's a great potential lead driver as well, that if they're up there on the roof and they're doing these little small minor projects, if a more large scale situation comes up, they're going to win that job most likely because they're already up there. So I've seen more companies steering towards that. There's now companies that train companies how to create service departments and things of that nature.
Sure.
So I think that's going to be a more emerging trend, probably sooner rather than later. That'd be my guess.
Makes sense.
I'm reminded DuPont used to sell coatings, right? Maintenance coatings and for buildings and things like that. And they had a whole division of folks that just focused on what they call maintenance planning services.
Okay.
Where they would go out and they would sell an owner on a planned maintenance program for X number of dollars for the year or 2 years or 5 years, whatever it was. And then they would do exactly what you're talking about there. Go out there, they would maintain that building or maintain that facility. And then when the big project came in, they understood the project. They understood what was really going to be involved on it. They priced it appropriately, and they were able then to get that extra dollar out of that owner. It was a very successful program.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Something that people can point back to of something that's already worked.
Absolutely. Yeah.
There's a question for you two. I just thought of this. So every commercial roofing system out there built into the warranty, right? And the language says the roof needs to be maintained, right? And then what the expectations are for that. What percentage, if you just had to put a number on it, do you think of those roofs are actually properly maintained and would be, if valid, under warranty, and or what percentage do you think aren't?
I would throw out there maybe a little bit of high percentage, but I think 40% are probably maintained, 60% not maintained.
Okay.
Yeah.
I was going to go higher.
Of maintenance.
They're just not maintained. The building owners, you have to have a very sophisticated owner that is willing to spend the money on maintenance and understands the payback. And many of these owners just, it's an expense that they see, and it's not, they don't see the payback.
So for that to happen, there's a lot of education that would be needed. Get those building owners to even understand that this is a need or a necessity, or, hey, it says it right here.
Because the problem with our industry is it's out of sight, out of mind. Above you never see it. You never
Unless
go
there's
up
a
there.
leak.
But once the leak occurs, all of a sudden it's a massive emergency, and something needs to change immediately, if not sooner. So they're not willing to spend the money on cleaning the drains out. They're not willing to get up there and take a look at it and look at the flashings. Or in some cases, they've got a HVAC guy up there. He's fixing a unit, and he drops a hammer, and he damages the roof, but he doesn't want to tell somebody that, because all of a sudden there's a back charge. He doesn't want to be the guy that caused the back charge. So, and you wouldn't find that unless there was a leak. But if you had a planned maintenance program going up there in the summer, in the spring or summer or fall or whatever, you might be able to see that and take corrective action.
Sure.
But it's an owner. It's in the owner hands, and they don't see the value in it. I don't think, unless it's a very sophisticated owner.
Where they've gotten burned in the past.
Yeah, I was on a roof recently, and there was beer bottles, vape pens, and fireworks on the roof, and the owner didn't know. I'm like, hey, what are you doing
It's a
up here? He's
party.
like, no, the kids have been getting up there. And then there was scrapes in the roof. Somebody dragged something across there, and if somebody wasn't up there doing some maintenance, he wouldn't have known, and probably a bigger and bigger issue would have came from it.
Yeah.
So
I think that's from a contractor standpoint, selling the owner on a planned program is very it's lucrative for the contractor, and it's helpful for the owner. But you got to get that guy to think about it and to buy into it. And unless he has had a previous experience where something has happened, he's gonna not pay attention.
he had to get burnt for at some point. Yeah. Well, guys, the closing remarks or things we want to talk about on these subjects at all? We reviewed a lot today.
We did review a lot. I think this was a pretty good
fun.
first episode.
Yeah,
I'm looking forward to the next one.
So what do you think? I think next one of the things I think that would be interesting for us to discuss, and we touched upon it today, but maybe is some of the emerging technologies that are entering into our space. That can be drone technology, that can be AI, that could be estimating, that could be tools. There's so many things that we're seeing whenever we go to like the IRE. There's hundreds of companies that are technology-based companies that are entering our space. So I think that'd be
interesting.
something interesting for us to chat about. Hey everyone, thanks for tuning in to today's podcast. We appreciate you being here. On behalf of the A&D products team, Mike, John, and myself, we appreciate you. We're looking forward to the next episode. We will be talking about all of the emerging technologies and AI that is entering into our commercial roofing space. And if you would like to get in touch with any of us personally, it is just our first name. So either Derek, Mike, or John at roofdealer.com. We would love to chat with you. Please like, subscribe, and follow. And we look forward to seeing everybody on the next episode.